Wakarongo Ki te reo Māori e karangane Whakarongo Ki ngā akoranga tira Nā te atua I tuku iho Kia tātou e Pupuritia Kōrerotia Mo ake tonu Tirohia Ngā tikanga kapua ngā tipuna Kapohia Hei oranga ngā kau Aue Whiua ki te ao Whiua ki te rangi Whiua ki ngā iwi katoa Kauara watia E tuku ae Kia meme ae Wakarongo Ki te reo Māori e karangane Wakarongo Ki ngā akoranga tira Tēnā Kia pūrea te hauora e E kupu tuku iho Mo tēnei reanga E kupu tuku iho Mo tēnei reanga Wakarongo
Morena, morena, morena e te whānau. So, beautiful waiata from TJ and Huri, whakarongo. Whakarongo. Listen. Listen to what I have to say this morning. It's an interesting morning. So the last time I did my live, I think was Saturday. Yes, Saturday morning. Then we had our moko's 21st. We had whānau staying over. And on Monday, I had mahi to do. So last night, I don't know if you were watching Te Ao Māori News. My papa, Hemi Pokere, was on. And I've tried to find the video clip of Te Ao Māori News so I could show it to you this morning, but they haven't, it's not up there, so I don't know if they're going to put it up there. But anyway, it was raining, the whole house, no security guards anymore, but they've fenced the whare right off. We've gone back to court to ask for another urgent hearing. We received, so Saturday well, the lawyer sent me, she must have received late Friday afternoon. So here's the strategy that I notice lawyers do, that they send out usually opinions or late Friday afternoon seems to be the day that everything comes out, right? And I think it's a strategy. I've noticed that over the years, and I think it's a strategy so it gives people the weekend to mull over, right? And the weekend I did mull over. So I had lucky I had my mokopuna's 21st, because it was a wonderful, positive distraction, because when I received the email from the lawyers, Heritage New Zealand had sent in a letter and basically said that the wharepuni, or the whareropo, and the homestead were one of the same and built at the same time, and we're about 80 years old, which we know is not correct. Our history, which has been passed down to us, tells us that that is not correct. And so I've challenged, I've done up an affidavit. So that's what I've been doing over the last couple of days, is just doing up affidavits, getting it sworn in for another urgent hearing to challenge Heritage New Zealand assessment. Now, they never spoke to any kaumātua. They don't know the history of the place. They don't know what I know. And so I just want to, see if I can find it, actually. I didn't have it ready. So, here it is. I might just read it out to you. I didn't actually have it ready, and I wasn't going to, but since I'm speaking about it and I can't find the article, I'm actually going to read out my affidavit that's gone to the Māori Land Court. And I've stated, and here's the story. I, Donna Pokere-Phillips, legal advisor of Hamilton, solemnly swear I am a former trustee and deputy chairman of Te Hanataua Trust. When I was on the trust, I developed a papakainga plan for the restoration of our tonga, our whare tupuna, and our whare puni. Due to the change in trustees, this plan was never implemented. I am a current beneficiary of Te Hanataua Trust and a beneficial owner of ODA3 block. On Saturday, 14th of May 2022, I received the Heritage New Zealand Pouhere Taonga file dated 12th of May 2022. Mr. Peter J. Reid has concluded that the Ropo room is not a different structure to the rest of the house. He concluded that both structures were built at the same time and estimated the house was built in the late 1930s to early 1940s. There are many stories around our whare tupuna and our whare puni, which the report does not capture. These are living stories kept alive through the generations, passed down to me from Te Ariki Graham. I would like to dispute Heritage New Zealand conclusion that both whare are one of the same buildings and that they were built between the end of the 1930s and the beginning of the 1940s. During the sinking of the Lizzie Bell, our whare was used as a makeshift hospital and morgue. On the night of Wednesday, 24th of July, 1901, the Lizzie Bell was totally wrecked on the Waimate Reef, just past the Odi River that borders our whenua. The story passed down to me was the lights from our whare may have confused the captain of the Lizzie Bell as they headed towards it. Unfortunately, crew lost their lives that night. There were also Asian deckhands that lost their lives, who are buried in unmarked graves with the fallen crew. I was told my tupuna took particular care of the Asian deckhands as they were not given high priority in the rescue. It was also a moimoia of my tupuna to repatriate the Asian crew back to their country and back to their whānau. This moimoia, along with the protection of all our tonga, was passed to my father as the eldest living direct descendant of our tupuna. The demolition and confiscation of tonga has caused great trauma for the whānau brought up in the whare tupuna, especially my auntie, who was evicted and found herself homeless, and my father, as they were both the kaitiaki of these taonga. Now that's my affidavit. That's going in front of the judge, and I'm not too sure what day that is. So I just wanted to give you an update of where we are with our wharepuni. I was really disappointed in Heritage New Zealand. They've created more angst than they have resolved anything, and there was no forensics done. So we just have to carry on with the battle, and you know me. You know me. Hey, this is too important for me to give up on, because it's our connection to our tupuna. It's a connection to our heritage. It's a connection to our responsibilities and our obligations that we were born into to protect and preserve. And it highlights actually how trust, which is, you got to remember, trusts are a government entity, right? Trusts are a government entity. And so, if we look at iwi as well, and I've spoken about this in meetings that I've attended, iwi, even though we had iwi back in the day, iwi is a government entity created through settlement processes, right? Our true governance sits at hapu, always have, and I believe always will, because that's where the kawa and tikanga sit. So those that don't understand that, you have marae, and then you have a cluster of marae that whakapapa to each other, that become a hapu. And then you have a cluster of hapu that usually have a whakapapa connection as well, that become an iwi. And the only time hapu used to come together as iwi was during times of war or times of desperation. And then once that risk was no longer a risk, then the iwi would disband and go back to hapu governance. That's our normal way of functioning. And because of settlements, the government has created these entities called iwi. And because of settlements, the government has created these corporate entities, which are structured like a corporation. And same with the trust. Trusts are pretty much a corporate construct as well, created by legislation. So I want us to just think about all these things. And are these organizations, so we have, who support us, we have our kaumātua kaunihera, right? And we have our iwi authority that support the preservation and the protection of this wharepuni. So, and they put a rāhui over this wharepuni that was totally trampled on. So our kawa and our tikanga can be trampled on by the trust and by the Westminster court system. And there's a whole process that needs to be looked at there in regards to due process and how my auntie was treated. I've said to my auntie, you need to focus on that, auntie, because my focus is purely now on the wharepuni. So anyway, that is where we're at with that take. Now, moving on to another take, I want to play a news clip for you. And I just got to find it so I can share it with you. So yeah, let's just have a think about what I've just explained to you in regards to protection of taonga. Here it is. So, hang on. I'm just going to mute myself and then share. Mute.
This morning reveals the extent of social media's influence on the anti-mandate protests at Parliament earlier this year. The Disinformation Project at Pūnaha Matatini has found a staggering 73% of interactions were generated over that time by just a dozen Facebook groups. Report researcher Sanjana Hattotuwa is with us this morning. Thanks very much, Sanjana, for being with us. You described this as a tectonic moment. What do you mean by that?
Well, it is akin to what happened in Christchurch when the earthquake hit. Nothing on top of the ground in terms of the buildings that survived the earthquake and the buildings that were constructed after it. From the blueprints to the manner in which they were architected, the manner in which they are constructed, to the urban and town planning was the same after the earthquake. And the facts on the ground changed quite literally. The protest is a Christchurch earthquake moment for Aotearoa New Zealand's information and media landscape. The firmament shifted, the foundations upon which we will all engage with each other, consume the news.
I understand what you're saying is it was a major turning point.
And believe are going to be different.
Sanjana, yeah, sorry, we must have had a little bit of a break up there. I understand you're saying this is a major turning point, although I have to say for people who were families of the victims of those Christchurch earthquakes, it's perhaps not exactly comparable when people lost their lives. But what impact did this situation have on misinformation and disinformation compared to other events, say lockdowns or alert level changes? What impact did the protest have?
Well, in response to what you said, people have lost their lives because of disinformation. This is something that President Biden has said very clearly. This is something that governments the world over have said very clearly. Misinformation and disinformation do kill and have killed during the pandemic. So this is something quite serious and not something that is just limited to online domains. Just wanted to make that very clear.
And what impact did it have then on misinformation and disinformation, the protest itself? What kind of spikes did we see around that time specifically?
Unprecedented levels of it, from the production of the content to the engagement of it. We study Facebook pages and Instagram and TikTok and Twitter and YouTube, and across all the platforms, producers were producing more content every day and for a longer period of time every day. And that content was being engaged with, commented on, shared, liked, reshared, re-edited and posted into other platforms. And so the level of that kind of content production and engagement we've never seen in the country before.
But in terms of where it was originating, you talk about the misinformation dozen. What does that mean?
So amongst the pages that we looked at, over 70% of the content and its engagement were linked to 12 accounts or 12 producers, which we call, along the lines of the Centre for Digital Hate's Disinformation Dozen, we call them Aotearoa New Zealand's Misinformation Dozen. Amongst those 12, interestingly enough, there is one account which produced the most amount of content and was engaged with the most, for example, on the 2nd of March, when the protest was shut down. So that account, for example, just to make it easier for viewers, had tens of thousands of concurrent viewers on the live stream on Facebook, which was by order of magnitude more than anything else comparably at the time that mainstream media was putting out. So you had a fundamentally different perspective of what was going on, depending on which live stream you tuned into.
Yeah.
So these 12 are responsible for shaping the mindsets of tens of thousands, if not much more.
You said it was shut down. Was it shut down by the people that had created it?
What I was referring to was the protest in front of the Beehive being shut down.
Right.
None of these accounts have been shut down. None of these accounts have been shut down. They're still very much active.
Sanjana, it's Ryan here. I'm assuming it's the same page. I watched one of those live streams, and the reason I watched it is because it gave me a perspective inside the cordon. All of the news mainstream media live streams were outside of the cordon, and I know a lot of my friends were sharing that amongst themselves to say, hey, if you want to see what's going on inside, here's another camera angle. So I guess the most important question for you is if you're saying that, this is a tectonic plate shift, how many followers did these accounts have before and how many do they have now?
We have seen, So there were more followers in those 4 or 5 weeks that these accounts garnered or gathered than months before. So from September to January, that gives you an idea of just how much of magnetic appeal all of these accounts had, but some more than others, as a consequence of just what you outlined. But let me just say that...
Sorry, Sanjana, I didn't quite hear you there. How many followers did they have before and how many did they have after? Do you know?
So across the board, in the 4 to 5 weeks of the protests, they gathered more followers than from September to January combined.
But how many?
That gives you an idea.
Yeah, but were there 12 to start with and then 24 to end?
No. So on Telegram, for example, 145 accounts that we look at generated over 60,000 followers just on Telegram. On Facebook, that value is much more. It's over 100,000 followers across the accounts that we look at. So it depends on the platform. On Instagram, it was more than September to January combined. So it's tens of thousands of followers added. So these are significant numbers.
Sanjana, are you able to track where these accounts originated from? We were told at the time that this was imported extremism. Was it? Were these overseas-based accounts?
Well, that's an interesting question. In terms of the followers, it's almost an impossible task for independent researchers because we don't have access to that data. What I can assure you is that the predominant dis and misinfo producers, those accounts are all domestic accounts.
Right. So different to what we were being told at the time. Report researcher Sanjana Hattotuwa, thanks very much for being with us this morning with your research.
Thank you very much. Interesting, which I guess makes the Prime Minister guilty of misinformation at the time, doesn't it? Because she told us it was all imported.
We were told that, yeah.
So there you go, misinformation everywhere.
Did you hear that last comment? That they were told that these pages were imported from overseas. This gentleman, Sanjana Hattotuwa, said no, that they were all domestic accounts. And we just heard there that the Prime Minister is also responsible for dis and misinformation. So that's an important, I think, point to end on that particular news clip. Now, who is Sanjana Hattotuwa? And I hope I pronounced his name correctly. So he is from Sri Lanka. Oh, hang on. Sanjana is he taught English at the University of Delhi, India, and is a Rotary World Peace Fellow. He was awarded an advanced master's in conflict resolution and international relations from the University of Queensland, and he did his PhD here from the University of Otago. Now that we know that university is funded by Bill Gates. So all we have to do, whānau, is just start, digging away, doing a little bit of our own research. And when they started doing this project, what was it called? The Disinformation Project, I think it was called. When they started doing that project, and they've highlighted 12 social media accounts as sharing disinformation. The Disinformation Project is the Centre for Science and Society, right? And so it's important for us to get a broad view of who's sharing this information and why is the government not part of that project? Why is the government not looked at as part of the project? Because what I saw is, firstly, the word, you were a conspiracy theorist, right? That was bandied, and I challenged people. I was even called that, and I said, that's very fine. That's fine. That's fine. You call me a conspiracy theorist, but please, let's get back to the specifics and what part of my kōrero and conversation is a conspiracy so I can respond to that. So they started using that word to capture people that didn't follow the narrative, right? And now you've got misinformation and disinformation, and it seemed to have taken over the word conspiracy theorists, right? And now you have this researcher who is from Sri Lanka, who only completed his PhD last year, being the be all end all and the guru for misinformation and disinformation. Now you have to challenge that when they don't even bring the government into that analysis, and they're funded by the university that he got his PhD from is funded by who other than Bill Gates. And then the media outlet that's pumping out this information all the time and pushing, because News Hub, and I call them News Grub because I think their hands are dirty, News Hub are funded by Vanguard. So if you go right through the whakapapa, and I've done this before several times, at the end of that whakapapa is Vanguard. Now, Vanguard also own Pfizer. So you just start looking at your research and peeling away at the layers, and then voila, you get a better picture. Now, is that misinformation or disinformation? No, what it does and what you have to do, don't listen to what I have to say. Don't take what I say as gospel. Go and do your own research and go and make up your own mind, because that's how we inform each other. And it's all very well to have these organizations like Voices for Freedom is one of the dozen. NZDSOS, Doctors Speaking Out with Science, is also one of them. The one that he was talking about that was doing the live is Chantel Baker, right? And so yes, he's analyzing, but like these guys said, and oh gosh, I think it's really important that we heard that, is that the government also, and the Prime Minister also, is responsible for misinformation and disinformation. And what you want to do is you want to have a non-biased researcher doing the research rather than continuing to push the propaganda, because News Hub is a sponsored media outlet. You can't actually technically call them the fourth estate anymore, because they're owned by Vanguard. When you go through that whakapapa, I mean, MediaWorks sold it on to Disney, who combined with Warner, who is owned by AT&T, who is owned by Vanguard. And Vanguard are owners of Pfizer and Moderna. So follow the money, honey, really, and do your research. So that's that point. What else? I also want to play another clip because I want us to have an understanding of what's happening within the social media space and within the media space. It's really important. So I'm going to share this other clip. Just got to find it first, whānau. Okay. Right, found it. Okay. I'm going to mute myself and then share.
Kia ora na tātou katoa, called Chelsea Cathers Munro, tōku ingoa. Confirmation bias. Ever heard of it? Confirmation bias is a psychological term. It's becoming more widely talked about because of how it relates to human thinking, the internet, and pandemic. It simply means we look for information supporting our beliefs, and we dismiss information that doesn't, even if those beliefs are proven to be wrong. Over time, this bias can harden our point of view and make us less willing to accept or understand other arguments. The internet and access to a world of information means we can become vulnerable to misinformation and disinformation, which is the intentional spreading of incorrect facts. Here's an example of confirmation bias. Say you believe all people driving green cars are worse than blue car drivers. You might see a green car driver cut you off and believe it's proof you were correct. All green car drivers suck. But what if a blue car driver cuts you off? You might dismiss it as just a bad driver. No one is immune to confirmation bias. It affects everyone, even me. Studies suggest it's tied to our brain chemistry. Finding information we think confirms our views creates a dopamine hit, like listening to great music. It likely had an evolutionary function, but has become really problematic in the internet era. Social media algorithms guide us to information we want to see, which can reinforce our bias and make us feel good. This could then lead us into the rabbit hole, an endless loop that tells us everything we believe is correct, warping our view of the world. So, can we break our confirmation biases? Of course, but it's not that easy. One method is to continually ask ourselves the following questions. Am I trying to build a one-sided case? Am I looking at a wide range of sources and making sure those sources are reliable, not just telling me what I already think? Ultimately, it comes down to making sure we don't end up in a rabbit hole and being aware our brains are prone to biases we're not always conscious of. The Whole Truth About the COVID Vaccine is a series from Stuff made in partnership with Māori Television and Pacific Media Network. We received funding from the Google News Initiative.
Sort of raised a red flag when they said they received funding from Google News Initiative. But anyway, let me go back to some of your comments. So what does Chris have to say? Confirmation bias. The government paying 20 people to say masks keep us safe, and now everyone is walking the streets wearing masks. Thank you for your comment, Chris. Chris Andrews, pandemic treaty. Coco says they're using these analysts as prophets, speaking falsehoods on biblical revelations now as they use the term as in the days of Noah. The floods receded in the days of Noah. Noah's days began after the flood. I hear what you're saying, Coco. What you're saying is that they do. They use these PhD researchers as if they are the guru, the be all end all of that information. Now, he was a senior researcher for Centre for Policy Alternatives. He oversees the work in Centres of Pioneering Civic Media Unit. He was part of the Crisis Information Management Peacekeeping Initiatives, and I'm talking about Sanjana Hattotuwa. So he was part of United Nations, and he's part of the National Centre for Peace and Conflict Studies at the University of Otago. So he's involved internationally. He's involved in human rights and a justice of peace. Must be a justice of peace. Yeah, so he's internationally, I guess, quite a recognised researcher, but it's like everything, hey, you got to start connecting the dots. Like, for example, our Prime Minister is a alumni of the World Economic Forum, and does that, who been an alumni of a billionaires club, and they create global policies for globalization, right? So for me, globalization is what concerns me, because globalization will interfere in sovereign states. Now, we are all concerned, and I'm not going to talk about it today because I don't have enough research. Um, but we are all concerned about this pandemic treaty with World Health Organization, the one that Biden is signing off. Now, I don't understand, and please help me in this space, because I don't really understand it. How can Biden contract the whole world into the World Health Organization? Isn't it the sovereign states? Otherwise, so what we're seeing, you're looking at Marsden Point, and all I'm trying to do, Whānau, is allow us to have a think about it and go away and do our own research. So our refinery company, Marsden Point, our refinery up in Marsden Point, has been shut down. We're in a fuel crisis at the moment. Our fuel has shot up. We're dependent on other international states. So what's happening is there's a shift. There's a shift on our resources. There's a shift on what we can grow and what we can provide for ourselves. So for globalization to come to fruition, means that you have to see the collapse of us being able to look after ourselves, right? And what you'll see, and fuel is all part of that, and the shutting down. And where is our media again to ask the hard questions? That's why we have to support Sue Gray in the by-election, because she needs to be in Parliament, and she needs to be their thorn in their side and ask the relevant questions. Ask the difficult questions. Why are we shutting down our only refinery, and makes us dependent on the world for our fuel, when the fuel prices are going sky high? The quality of the fuel's not the same. And so you're seeing all these markets collapsing, which makes us more dependent on global markets. Now, is that a shift in ideology? Is that a shift in the way that our governments are trying to send our markets, that we shut down our own independence, our independent markets that supply us, right? That supply our kai and supply our fuel and our energy. So and is it that certain countries, and this is how they create dependency, so those certain countries aren't solely independent, that they are dependent on other countries for certain resources. And is that how they get compliance from these sovereign countries? Because if you misbehave, then we're going to cut off your fuel supply. Is that what is happening? I don't know. I am just asking you the question and giving you food for thought, and for you to go out and source your own information. And if you find out, please share it with me, because you fellas share a lot of information with me, and I really do appreciate it. And thank you very much for your comments. So we need to keep an eye on what's happening with the World Health Organization. The fact that current governments around the world can bind future governments. I mean, if you don't, I mean, does that breach, I don't know, I'm not an expert in the US Constitution, but does that breach the Constitution? And if it doesn't breach their constitution, is that something that the US, the people, need to consider to protect their sovereignty? That a government can't bind future governments, right? I mean, I saw it in local councils all the time, how local councils would be giving permits out and give like water permits to foreign companies for bottling, right? Water permits to foreign companies, and all they had to pay for was the permit, and they were sucking our water out. I mean, look at Coca-Cola, for example. They bring their dry ingredients to New Zealand, but they use our water to fill up their Coke bottles. And so do those bottling companies use our Pūnaha, use our spring, our pristine water to fill up the water bottles and then sell them back to us. I mean, people, we got to get this right. We've got to hold our local governments accountable for all that is happening, as well as our central government, because corporations have more power and say in our lives than we care to think about it. So again, more food for thought, whānau. So I just want to thank Glenys, Chris, Catherine, Louise, Ellen, Kahurangi, Trish, Greg, Coco. Thank you all. There's a few of you that have made more than one comment, but I am going to go back to your comments because I think that they're really important. So what does Trish have to say? Sad to hear about. Hello, honey. Oh, hello. Nanny's just doing the life. Come here. You all right? Are you shy? We're going to take it to the pools? Yeah. Okay. We've got to go. We haven't been to the pools today, so our mokopun has just come in, letting us know she wants to come to the pools with us. So, yeah. So she said, sad to hear that about Heritage New Zealand. I hope you are able to preserve your wharepuni. It sounds awesome. Yeah, I was pretty disappointed, and I've heard many a story about Heritage New Zealand being responsible for destroying a number of wāhi tapu as well. But anyway, that's for another live, I guess. Anyway, that's a side topic, something that I'm very passionate about. Kia ora, Mo. What does Mo have to say? Ngā mihi arua ki a koe whaetona. Oh, ngā mihi, Mo. And what does Dear say? Kia ora whaia, kia ora. Greg says, oh my Lord, he's just trying to sound intelligent. Oh, you're talking about this Sanjana Hattotuwa from Sri Lanka. I mean, here's this guy from Sri Lanka. He only got his PhD last year, telling us New Zealanders how to think and be. Hey, at least if they were going to get someone to do that, they could have picked someone that was born here in Aotearoa. I'm not saying that makes a difference, but I think it does, because if he's got international connections to UN and other international organizations already that puts a question mark on his, I guess, objectivity, if I can say that, and especially if he got his PhD from the University of Otago, and we already know that the University of Otago is funded by Bill Gates. So, we just need to start connecting the dots, whānau? Kia ora, Fire Alley, LOL. They won't be naming the account as their butts will get sued. Well, they did. They did name a few accounts in the media outlet. So that's going to be interesting, because, it's all very well to say you're a conspiracy theorist or you're sharing misinformation or disinformation without actually going to the source of that information. Otherwise it becomes a catchphrase, doesn't it? I mean, if you were to just take that to the court, mind you, I'm even starting to question our whole judicial process. But if you were to, I've been trained in law, and you've got to go with evidence. Well, where's the evidence apart from regurgitating these words? Apart from, to me, it's spouting. It's spouting without saying what did they share was mis and disinformation. Because this is a fact for me, right? My father was injured. And I've told this story many a times, but I'm going to say it again. It's a fact. He was injured twice. Nearly died the second time. Seriously injured his heart the first time. We buried whānau 10 days after, 2 weeks after, 3 weeks after, even 2 months after they received their vaccination. We buried them. Now, there is there is an argument about whether or not there's a temporal association. Well, here's the thing, whānau. Between February and November of 2021, there was a spike in death of 2,000 deaths. That spike happened exactly the same time as the rollout of the vaccines happened. Now, this is facts. Where did the government hasn't investigated this? Let me go back and I will share this. I'll go back to the latest report and I'm going to share this. So, hang on, whānau, just wait a moment. Okay, so this is Safety Report 43 from MedSafe, right? And it takes us up to the 30th of April. Up to the 30th of April, serious injuries, 3,287 serious injuries, 62,086 injuries from the beginning of the rollout. 62,000. Now, these are facts, whānau. These are not made up data. These are facts. 3,287 serious injuries. Now, if we carry on down, right, so we look at adverse events following immunization. And that gives you a breakdown of ethnicity, breakdown of age, the reporting. So the public are doing most of the reporting. Isn't that interesting? That the public are reporting more than you got vaccinators reporting, you've got nurses reporting, but 25,000 from the public are reporting. So you got mortalities between the ages of 10 and 29, 8, between the ages of 30 and 59, 31, between the ages of 60 and 79, 72, between the ages of 80 and 49. Up to and including the 30th of April, 160 deaths have been reported to come. Now, I've told you, not so that you can see me. Oh, no, I'll come to the side so you can see the report. Now, I told you that CALM sits within the University of Otago and is funded by Bill Gates. How can they be independent when you know you join the dots and you look at the whakapapa and it goes back to Big Pharma and it goes back to Bill Gates? So, and here's what's really interesting about this report. It said 99 of these deaths are unlikely, which means they don't know. 48 of these deaths could not be assessed, which means they don't know. 10 cases are still under investigation and 3 deaths have been associated. So out of the 160, there's only 13 that have really been investigated, right? And the rest are I don't know. So that's that report. Now let's go down further, which is the most important one as far as I'm concerned, table 7. And it's got dose 1. And deaths from dose 1 is 1,103 deaths. After dose 1, after dose 2, 1,133 deaths. And after dose 3, 746 deaths. So that's a lot of deaths. And these are facts. This is not misinformation and disinformation. And here's even another important data that hasn't even been considered. So you look at cardiovascular system, and that's the part that I'm interested in because of what happened to my father. You look at heart attacks, 16,347 heart attacks as adverse events that are of special interest after immunization. Myocarditis and pericarditis, 931. And what else has been, because this is not mandatory data capture, they say between only 5 and 10% of the data is captured. I mean, that's a red flag in itself. And even if you don't consider that this is only between 5 and 10% of the data captured, the deaths you can say are pretty accurate because all deaths have to be recorded. In regards to adverse events, then that's the area where only 5% to 10% is captured. So ask yourself, that is enough to really say to governments, red flag, we need to investigate. And you still hear that people have died with COVID, not of COVID, and that they cannot actually determine the difference. OIAs have gone out to try and determine the difference, and we're getting back the information. Basically, what I'm saying is the data is not clear on the with and the of. So it's captured in that word with or associated to, not dying actually of COVID. So, and I knew that if anything had happened to my father, he would have been associated with dying of COVID, with COVID, because he was diagnosed as having COVID a few weeks prior to him being hospitalized. And, look at pregnancy, abortion, spontaneous abortion or miscarriage, 290. 290. So, this data strokes 14,776. Yeah. Anyway, it's always good. I haven't been back to MedSafe for a while, so it's pretty good just going back in there and checking. So what's this? That's Sanjana Hattotuwa, and you saw him on that interview. So yeah, whānau. I'll just come back on. Oh gosh, a lot of comments. I just got to check your comments out, whānau. What does media reports say? These reactions are caused from the virus more. Oh gosh. But here's the thing. This report started, so we're up to safety report 43A. Is she ready? Are you ready, honey? Oh, you ready to go to the pools? So that's an indicator that my life is going to be cut off soon. Oh, my mukupuna's got her swim vest on and her togs on. We have beautiful pools here. It's indoors. The pools are warm. Yes, honey. Nanny's just finishing her life. Okay. Tell Coco, get ready. Sorry, whānau. This is my life anyway. Where was I? Yeah, so especially myocarditis and pericarditis. So you know the story. When I walked into the hospital, we had the renal doctors there. We had the cardiologist doctor there, heart doctor there, registrars, and the room was full. And that's what they said. As soon as I walked in, they said, "Oh, your father's very unwell from COVID. He has had COVID, and now he's seriously unwell." And I said, "But what happened to safe and effective?" I says, "He is unwell because he was boosted." I said, "If you look at his file will show that after the second jab, he got myocarditis." And I said, "And you didn't find that out. I did, by asking for him to get an echo scan. Otherwise, you were going to send him away and nothing was going to be done from a hospital perspective." So I have, when he was in hospital for just recently, he did get good care. Why? Because I was there and I made sure. And then when I wasn't there, I had my sisters there, my brother there. And, you just have to be vigilant, whānau. I honestly have lost trust in a lot of the systems that have been set up. Because we've centralized everything. Well, centralization is no different to globalization, right? You look at globalization, they want a handful of people to control the world. That's what globalization is. Usually the elite, the wealthy, the elite, the powerful. You look at centralization, a handful of people controlling our country. We want to decentralize our government and decentralize the world. And this codependency that they're creating with other countries is a major concern, because with codependency, if you misbehave, they'll cut off what you're reliant on. So hence the reason why Marsden Point is such an important battle, whānau. I haven't been up there, and I've got my own battles to battle, as you can see, but I do eventually want to get up to Marsden Point. And I know that the Outdoors and Freedom Party do support the occupation and the protest of Marsden Point, because that's our refinery. We get rid of that, then we're totally dependent on cheap koretake fuel, right? And then all they have to do is cut that. Like they can with bank accounts and all those sorts of things, force people into compliance by putting pressure on them. So we want to create a decentralization society, that where we know our communities and we get our community police officers to look after our community doctors, community nurses, rather than militarizing our police force, which we're seeing all around the world. And yeah, I'm getting pressure to go to the polls, whānau. Sorry, I'm actually enjoying this kōrero. But I'm just going to put up what Anna has to say. You need to have a chat with Breakfast Show and ask them to explain disinformation, misinformation. They have no real idea how much of these two things they are reporting. It's shocking. The Telegram site was spoken about as well, where information is being told. Unfortunately, Donna, it's causing confusion for a lot of people. Leighton Baker has been silenced until he goes to court. Not sure about those details. Here's the thing, whānau. Misinformation, disinformation, and conspiracy theory only come out when people started challenging government narrative. Before that, they were the one source of truth. When people started waking up, the way that they've been able, and they've been responsible for misinformation, disinformation, and blatant lies. And that's what I mean, for Sanjana Hattotuwa to have real credibility, he should have brought the government into that research. Otherwise, he's saying they are the one source of truth and they do not share misinformation and disinformation. And so that makes him not a credible researcher, actually. And then I showed you about what was the Okay, I've probably taken it down. Yeah, I've taken it down. Sorry, whānau. I was just going to have a talk about it. Oh, and even the term tectonic shift, how Parliament protests supercharge New Zealand's misinfodemic. So they're calling it a misinfodemic now, according to a major new analysis. Dr. Sanjana Hattotuwa, you know? He's become the be-all, end-all. And remember, he's just come over from Sri Lanka. And he's worked for the UN, and he's, you know, hey, you know, I'm not going to takahi on his mana for all the work that he's done, but, you know, there's a question mark in regards to who is he working for. When he got his PhD from the University of Otago, and say it again, who's funded by Bill Gates. So you're not going to... So what I'm talking about is sponsored research, sponsored media, sponsored governments, and they give themselves, you know, they become guru-like, and there is confusion out there. Hence the reason why you have to go out and do your own research. I hope that I just jig your brain, you know, like they say, poke the bear, but this time I'm poking your brain and just giving you food for thought and allowing you. I mean, we're adults enough to come up with our own conclusions. For goodness sake, we've brought up children, grandchildren, brought homes, created businesses, created societies, and when we saw that those that told us that we had to close our businesses, either get the jab or lose our jobs, or be injured or die from that injury. Because, you know, notice he put that fear in there. He said misinformation kills. That's right. Misinformation kills. So does propaganda kill. My father nearly died, and I've buried whānau who have died because they listened to the government's narrative, safe and effective. We know that science has been changing. Why? Because more science is coming out that supports us. Right? The science is shifting, and so now they've brought in the new terminology, bias. What is it? Bias confirmation, or where we start looking for, and how Facebook and the algorithms push out information that you want to see, so that affirms our bias, and they say all humans are biased. Well, so is the media, so is the government, but they use that knowingly on the public, whereas the public don't use that knowingly. They go out and do, you know, they try and do their homework, and they try and source this information. Why is it? The government needs to ask, why is it that these social media influencers have so much influence? Because the public do not trust you. You have destroyed Labor. The sixth Labor government has destroyed this country's trust in them. The media, you have destroyed our trust in you, because you are no longer the fourth estate. What you are sponsored propaganda tools. So until the likes of Sanjana Hattotuwa include the government in that misinformation, then he's biased. His research is biased. I'm going to leave it there because I'm getting the look. They want to go. So I'm going to leave it there for now, whānau. I am going to go through and read your comments. Thank you all for taking the time out to engage with me. Thank you, Maria. So I'm just seeing new ones come on as well. Like Anna, Greg. Yeah, thank you all. And I will read those comments when I've got time. Yes, honey, Neni's coming. Okay, I'm coming right now. See you later. Kia pai tō rā. Ka kite anō, kia ora rā. Ka kite.